Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our weekly series of shirim on the Zohar Kadosh, the book of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, where we typically introduce the shir with explaining that we're drawing down the light of Moshe into the kelim of Rabbi Shimon. That Moshe Rabbeinu is the light of Chachma, Rabbi Shimon is the light of Bina, and the job is to take the water of Chachma, the clarity, the unity of Chachma, and draw it down into the fire and the vessels of Bina. And we typically associate Moshe Rabbeinu with Chachma and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai with Bina. And the secret of the unification between Moshe, which is Chachma, and Rashbi, which is Bina, is the secret of Keser, which we've described as Emasai Ka'asimar, like Mashiach Tzidkenu tells the Baal Shem Tov when he asks, when are you going to arrive? The Baal Shem Tov asks the question of Emasai Ka'asimar, when are you going to arrive? But you, the Mem Resh, can be understood as merirus, as bitterness. All bitterness comes from a separation between Chachma and Bina, a separation between Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, a separation between the mind and the heart, a separation between objective and subjective, a separation between ideal and real, etc., etc. And we have to take that merirus and we have to transform it into the unity of Moshe and Rashbi. Moshe and Rashbi is Rosh Tevos Mar. Mar is Gematria 240, which is the Gematria of Amalek. And the way that we undo the klipa of Amalek is by unifying Chachma and Bina together, seeing the whole and the part at once. Expansivity, and then an expansivity that goes down into all of the particularity, illuminating the particular with the light of the whole. All of this is the secret of Mar. Emasai Ka'asimar. It's the secret of the bittul of Amalek and the Gilui of the Roma Muskel, of the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which comes about in the unity of Chachma and Bina, Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. But what we're going to see in the Chelak of the Zohar HaKadosh that we're going to be looking at today is that it's going to be a different erech, it's going to be a different relationship, because while we typically say that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai represents Bina in relationship to the Chachma of Moshe Rabbeinu, we also know, as we saw from the Ramchal just this week, B'siyata Deshmaya, or 2 weeks ago, that every ounce of Chiddush Torah has to be the secret of Har Sinai and Moshe, drawing down Moshe into Har Sinai. Because Sinai is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that's the world of Bina, and Moshe is the light of Chachma. So that the Gilui of Torah has to come from Chachma expressing itself within Bina. The whole has to express itself by way of the part. But because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was so makusher and so fundamentally connected to this basic understanding of what his role is, that as the role of Bina, his role was to simply reveal the light of Chachma of Moshe Rabbeinu, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai becomes just like Moshe Rabbeinu. And each and every one of us is just like Moshe Rabbeinu, but especially Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. As we see in the beginning of the Ijer Rabbah, and the Ramchal spends a lot of time discussing it, but you see throughout the Zohar, the secret of the identity between Moshe and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and the secret of Alisa Lamarom V'Shavisa Shavi Lakachos Matanos M'Bnei Adam, that Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Shemayim and he draws down the soul of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Shevi is Rosh Tevos Shimon Bar Yochai. So there's a way of looking at Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai as if he reveals the light of Moshe himself. And from that perspective, Rabbi Shimon is not going to be the Bina that receives and holds the Chachma of Moshe, but rather Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is going to become the expression of Moshe himself. And that's when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai represents the secret of Chachma itself. Now, in Rabbi Shimon's world, there's visitors. The visitors are always carrying something. There's visitors that come from the sea. There's visitors that come from the Shemayim. There's visitors that come from the ground. There's visitors that come from above. They come from all over. And in Sabbath Mishpatim, what we spoke about was Rabbi Shimon, in the general perspective, is Rabbi Shimon is Bina, Rabbi Shimon is the dry land, Rabbi Shimon is severity, and Rav Himnuna Saba comes out of the great sea. That's the light of Chachma, that's the light of Moshe Rabbeinu, and Chachma wants to come to learn from Bina. And so we see in that perspective of looking at Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai as the host of the Zohar HaKadosh, welcoming guests. So Rabbi Shimon is Bina, and he's welcoming in the light of Moshe Rabbeinu so that the light of Moshe can learn the secret of Bina. But then there's going to be other times where, in relationship to the guests that are visiting, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is going to be the representation of Chachma, in the sense that he's revealing the light of Moshe Rabbeinu, in the secret of Emasai Ka'asimar. And if Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is going to be the Chachma, that means that the guests that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is meeting, or the travelers that he's learning from, are going to be the element of Bina. And in what we're going to be discussing in this week's Zohar Kadosh is that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai represents Chachma. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in this context represents the simple awareness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the source of all goodness, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bestow goodness, and every ounce of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's bestowal in this world is fundamentally good. Fundamentally good. There's a radical acceptance of the fundamental goodness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite presence that expresses itself in one way in the human mind, which is bittul. The nullification that's associated with chachma, the bittul, the level of ayin, the nothingness, where a person starts to look at their lives and starts to look at reality as an extension, an expression that comes from above, from a realm of infinitude. That's the light of chachma. Chachma is the flowing nature of the realization that all of the congealment that I encounter down here is nothing but the waves of congealment that start way, way, way up in the place of refinement and purity and kedusha in the secret of chachma. And to live from a perspective of Chachma is to live with ayin, to live with bittul, to live with an awareness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always already present. He is more real than we are. And all we have to do is open up our minds in order to receive that ever-present nature of the fact that there is an all-rightness that rests at the core of all things. The secret of the Shem Havaya, the secret of Chachma. That's what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is going to have here. From that perspective, all darkness is nullified in its root. All darkness is sweetened in the deepest way. He learned this from Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva had to go through all of that darkness in order to teach and give over this quintessential secretion of wisdom and the secret of the infinite light that's Meskala in the book of the Zohar. In Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's life, it's no longer the path of suffering. It's a path of Leis Smaila Bahai Atika. There is no concealment in that place of Atik. There is no concealment. All of the concealment is shown to be part and parcel of the revelation of the Yud Chachma Kaduma of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the secret of Chachma, the secret of the Yud. And so what we're going to see is that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is going to be Chachma. And he's going to encounter this interesting guest who comes from a place of Bina, comes from the desert itself, comes from a place of concealment. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is going to see the secret of concealment as reflected in a fierce level of Bina, a fierce level of Bina, perhaps the fiercest level of Bina that we get to see expressed in the Zohar, in Parsha Tetzaveh. And Rabbi Shimon is going to tame it. Rabbi Shimon is going to be able to put into context all of that chaos, all of that difficulty that we're going to see this messenger from the desert carry. And Rabbi Shimon is going to be able to reorient it in a way that it's all going to be seen through the perspective of Chachma. And so Rabbi Shimon is the Chachma, and this visitor from the desert is going to be the Bina, even though typically Rabbi Shimon is the Bina to Moshe Rabbeinu's Chachma. When Moshe Rabbeinu is mislavish and garbs himself within Rashbi, Rashbi takes on the shape of Moshe, which is the secret of Chachma, and then the Bina becomes the guest from the desert and all that he represents. And we're going to see that this conversation is framed in a general conversation of Chametz and Matzah. Chametz and Matzah representing Chachma and Bina, representing infinitude and finite expression. The calm, cool, collected nature and the menucha of Chachma, and the anger associated with Chametz. In Rabbi Nachman's book, Likutei Moharan, Chametz is fundamentally revealed as anger, as the tendency towards anger, of holding on to things for too long, of puffing up oneself too much expectation that's being disappointed. That's the world of Chametz. And the Zohar Kadosh is talking about what this thing of Chametz is and why on Pesach are we not allowed to eat Chametz, but on Shavuos we do partake of Chametz with the Shtei Halechem. And the Zohar Kadosh has this beautiful metaphor that when we came out of Mitzrayim, we were so sick and we needed medicine, and that medicine is the matzah, and you can't eat anything other than that matzah. You can't eat anything other than the medicine when you need the medicine. You need Chachma. It's not time to partake of Bina yet. Only after a person heals themselves and they attach themselves properly to the light of Chachma, where they realize that everything is good, everything is infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything is Alufa Shel Olam, only then can they go and partake of the Chametz. And then we engage in Chametz, and then by Shavuos, when we draw down the light of Keser, it's the unification between Chachma and Bina, the Chametz and the Matzah. It's the drawing out the potential of the Kas to bring out more Chidushei Torah. As Rav Tzadok HaKohen Meilablin teaches, as the Meshilach teaches, as the Zohar Kadosh in this week teaches, that when you properly understand the secret of matzah, then you can include chametz within it. Then you can include that tendency towards anger within the calmness. And then the Zohar Kadosh goes into the discussion of what happens on Rosh Hashanah. Because Rosh Hashanah, the beginningness of all things, Rosh Hashanah is the Pegisha, it's the beginning where it's the Beis of Bereshis. The Beis of Bereshis is Bina. But within the Beis of Bereshis, there's an innermost dot, which is the Aleph of Anoichi, which is the secret of Chachma. And anytime that there's an awakening of the world and it's the tikkun of Malchus, what happens on Rosh Hashanah is that there's two things going on. There's the chitzonius of the Devarim and the pnimius of the Devarim, the externality and the internality. The externality of Malchus is rectified by way of Bina. The internality, the interiority of Malchus is rectified by way of Chachma. Everything about Rosh Hashanah is the preparation for drawing down both Chachma and Bina. Chachma and Bina, the unity of Chachma and Bina. But by Rosh Hashanah, what we're awakening ourselves to is the beginning of a long process of the Yarech Isanim, of the 7th month of the year. And it's in this 7th month of the year through Elul, which leads us into Rosh Hashanah, and then Asar Simei Tshuva, and then Yom Kippurim, and then the Daled Yomim Ben Yom Kippurim l'Sukkos, and then Sukkos, and then Hoshana Rabbah, and then Shmini Atzeres. This represents the full spectrum of spiritual revelation from the beginning to the end, the process of beginning, descent into stuckness, and the elevation out of stuckness to the final conclusion of the Tikkun Ha'amiti on the secret of Shmini Atzeres, which is the Yichud Hashalim Be'ezras Hashem. And the whole story of Rosh Hashanah and Yerech Isanim in this 7th month represents this process of coming to find how to tame the intensity of Bina with the calmness of Chachma, and how to understand properly that Chachma reigns supreme. Chachma always reigns supreme. Ani and Bina and Gvura and the Kalim always serves at the purpose of Bittul and Ayin and Chachma, always perpetually revealing that all that we can know is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is far, 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 far greater than we can ever imagine, and that Simsum Eina Kapshuto, and that we can never grasp anything other than Kedushasi L'Ma'ala Mikdushasechem. When we can properly draw all of the Bina of the Yerech HaIsanim in the 7th month, which represents Bina, as we're going to see, back into the light of Chachma for Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai, so that's going to be the Hamtaka. And that reflects the framework of the story that's taking shape. And that reflects everything we're going to see in the Zohar HaKadosh. Now, what I want to try and do, I just spoke a lot, and I want to try and let the Zohar HaKadosh speak for itself, Be'ezras Hashem. The Zohar HaKadosh speak for itself, as it always does. But we're going to read far. We're going to read one chelek of the Zohar in Parshas Tetzaveh, and it goes on and on and on, and it starts way before we're actually starting. But we're going to see through the various inflection points, and hopefully not losing myself too much by way of tangent, but to read the words of the Zohar, the Hebrew, not just the block Hebrew and then translating it, but translating it in the process of reading it, and we'll see how the Zohar HaKadosh is itself giving us everything that we can ever possibly need, both on the level of self, on the level of narrative, on the level of inner, on the level of outer, on all of the levels. And it's revealing to us the deepest secrets, which are ultimately that Chachma is always the main thing, and Bina enables us to appreciate Chachma with more intensity, in the secret that we have to find the light, and then we descend down into the darkness, but it's only for the sake of the darkness, reminding us that we can now go back into the light with more intensity and more ferocity than ever before, going inside of the light to an even deeper place than we ever grasped before, which is the interiority of the light itself, which is going up to the pnimius of Chachma, which is the pnimius of Atik, and on that place it's leis smoila b'hayatika. There's nothing bad, everything is good, everything is beautiful, everything is light, everything is calm, everything is nothing other than the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the alufa shel olam b'chol tnua v'tnua. And in that place, we reach up to Keser. And we can't do that without going down into Bina. But you cannot go down into Bina. A person cannot go down into Bina without first and foremost affixing within their minds the fundamental reality that the one thing that is most true is the Ayin Ha'eliki, is the secret of Chachma, the Bittul, the Chachma Shebekol Davar, the Havayos HaMenukados, which represent the Chachma, the Bittul that takes shape when we realize that Or Ein Sof is being miskala in each and every prat. With that being said, let's look at the words of the Zohar HaKadosh, Be'ezras Hashem. So we're holding by Daf Kuf Pei Gimel Amud Beis, and really it starts with this beautiful teaching of Rebbe Lazar about the tzipor and the freedom of a bird, and the bird of the self, which is free. But let's start over here. Biyuma de Rosh Hashanah, on the day of Rosh Hashanah, the Ihu Yoma de Dina, it's a day of the revelation of severity, of tzimtzum, of gvuros, of judgments. The lav Ihu ela le'inun deloy natlu michla da asvasa, v'shavku la asvasa da iraisa. The only people who have to be afraid on Rosh Hashanah and be afraid of that severity are those who have not continued taking the medicine of matzah, taking the medicine of the Torah itself, which is chachma. Begin michla achra diyu chametz. Only a person who has shifted from chachma into bina and forgotten about chachma and started eating the chametz of bina has to be afraid on Rosh Hashanah. Daha biyuma da de Rosh Hashanah hahu chametz tzalka umekatrga alayhu de barnash alshin alayhu v'yukaima biyuma da mekatrga al ama. Because what happens on Rosh Hashanah is that the chametz goes up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the bina goes up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the dinim go up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Yitzhahara goes up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Yitzhar Tov is Chachma, and the Yitzhahara is bina also. That erech of Or and Kli, Yitzhahara and Yitzhar Tov is Chachma and bina also. Everything is Chachma and bina. Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef, this is the Iker Plukta, the Iker Machlokas and the Welt is Chachma and bina. The Iker process that each of us are going through is Chachma and bina, and it's all to come to a place of revealing Keser. And so, on that day, the chametz goes up, the Yitzhahara goes up, and it starts speaking negatively. It starts being malshin. It starts drawing judgments down upon Klal Yisrael. It starts drawing judgments down, God forbid, as a result of the gevuros of having chosen bina over chachma. V'kud sheberichu yasiv bedina al kula v'dayin alma. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sits on the kisei of din, and he judges the world. U'beginei kach kad yahav kud sheberichu arais l'Yisrael. Itim lahu mehahu nahama iloa dehahu eser. And therefore, in order to ensure that Klal Yisrael hold on to the main thing, and we remain connected to Chachma itself, and we never stop eating the matzah, and we never get stuck in the chametz itself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a taste of that Chachma. He gave us a taste of the man, of the Torah, which our mind eats, the Chachma saseichel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a taste of that. He gave us a taste of that bread from on high, which comes from that place of Chachma. And as a result of that man, that oichle haman, that secret of Chachma, that secret of the Emunah b'sharasho, the secret of the Torah, the man that Klal Yisrael ate from is the secret of Chachma, to ensure that they didn't get stuck in the severity of Bina. It enabled them to understand the depths of Torah, the mehich ba'erich meishor, to walk along the true path. V'ha'ukma mila inun chavraya kerazin. And this is the matter that has been discussed by the Chavraya by way of secret. So we see something amazing here. There's an element that's being said that in order to protect Klal Yisrael from falling too much into the chametz of bina, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a taste of the man, which is Chachma, which enables us to then properly understand Pnimiyas HaTorah. Why is it specifically Pnimiyas HaTorah that the man is going to be giving Eitzah for how to engage in? Because when a person learns Pnimiyas HaTorah, when a person learns the Zohar, when a person learns the Arizal, we can say that it becomes so clear that we're operating in a Bina language. The Eitz Chaim is a Bina language. All of the different sharim, all of the different technicalities, all of the different ins and outs and ups and downs and openings and closings. It's a language of Bina. It's a language of Yitzchak. Even the Zohar Kadosh, like we said. Yes, in relationship to the Bina of the Arizal, Rabbi Shimon Zohar is Chachma. And yes, in relationship to the desert person, we're going to encounter Rabbi Shimon as Chachma. But nevertheless, Rabbi Shimon is also a Bina Dika thing. Meaning to say that Pnimiyas HaTorah puts us face to face with Bina. And therefore, if it's not for the man and eating the chachma and understanding the bittul at the heart of all things, then we wouldn't be able to go down into the territory of Pnimiyas HaTorah properly, because we would see the proliferation of details and we would lose our way because we wouldn't remember the unified whole at the core of it. But once we remember the unified whole at the core of it by eating the man, so then we have the safety of knowing that we can go into the territory of Pnimiyas HaTorah and understand it properly. Okay, and so with that, we now encounter the next shlav of the piece of the Zohar that we're going to read. Now the Zohar, after framing that idea, now we enter into a narrative where we see that idea is taking shape in the relational world, in the very fabric of the world of the tzaddikim, and each and every one of us. Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar Brei, Have Azle Ba'orche. Rabbi Shimon is always with his son, Rabbi Elazar. Ayilu Bar. Rabbi Shimon is always with his son. And then there also happened to be Chavraya there. Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar were walking together. They were walking along a path. And they were walking along with Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yossi. Now this pairing of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar is also going to be a reflection on a microscopic level of the macrocosm that we're discussing, the relationship between Chachma and Bina. When it comes to Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar is Chachma and Rabbi Elazar Brei is Bina. and Rabbi Abba is Chachma, and Rabbi Yossi is Gematria 86, which is the Gevurus of Bina. So we see that on every molecular kind of fractalized part of the narrative of this Zohar, the same themes are taking shape. If a person has the eyes to look, and a person follows the tzaddikim, and they follow the tzaddikim's advice, that there's not one extra drop of ink in the Zohar, no description of a reaction from the Tanaim, no description of a sigh or a cry is meant to be left unstudied, is meant to be left without receiving the gift that it offers us. So they were walking along the way. Adahave azle aru bechad saba, dahave achid biyade chad yanuka. Along the path, they encountered an elderly man who was leading his young child by the hand. There was a Saba and there was a Yanuka. Zaktahel Gabala Sulam, this Saba represents Chachma, Zesha Kana Chachma, and the Yanuka is the secret of Katnas, is the secret of Bina. So we see that the same relationship that's taking place between Chametz and Matzah, which is Chachma and Bina, is also taking place between Rabbi Shimon and his son, is also taking place between Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yossi, and is also taking place between the Saba and the Yanuka, the old age of wisdom and Chachma, and the smallness of Bina. And we're going to see that this Saba and his son are going to be the ones who are going to come from the desert to teach about Bina, and Rabbi Shimon is going to be the one who tames it and shows that ultimately Chachma has to always, always, always win out. And then we'll enter into the deeper secrets. They were walking along the path, and they encountered a Chad Saba, Zakif Einoi Rabbi Shimon v'chamalei. Rabbi Shimon raised his eyes and he saw them. Why is it that Rabbi Shimon raised his eyes? The eyes are the perspective of Chachma. Yud Chachma Kaduma. The ears are Bina, and the eyes are Chachma. And Rabbi Shimon had to shift into the Chachma perspective in order to deal with this. Rabbi Shimon sensed, okay, incoming light from the world of Bina. And even though I represent Bina and I identify with Bina, nevertheless, I need to orient myself towards a perspective of Chachma in order to take on the light of Moshe Rabbeinu that can domesticate these lights of Bina and severity that come from the desert. So Zakif Einoi, he enters in, he actively raises up his eyes, meaning to say he actively enters into a place of Chachma. The Chamalei, and now he sees from the perspective of Chachma. Amrlei Rabbi Abba, and he turns to Rabbi Abba, who's the secret of Chachma. Vaday milin chadasin isgaben b'hai Saba. There are certainly going to be new words, chidushim, that we're going to hear from this old place. Meaning to say that we're going to learn something here. We're going to learn more about the right way of looking at things, more about the need to be mevatel bina to Chachma. Kadmatu lagabe Amar Rabbi Shimon. When they came closer, Rabbi Shimon says as follows: B'mitol de kuftarech begabech ka'osis man ant. You come with all of your heavy burdens. Who are you? The Balasulam says he wasn't walking with a donkey, he was carrying his goods upon him. It represents that he was carrying that youthful katnus with him. He was burdened down by the burdensome burden of Bina. He had a heaviness to him. His clothes were weighing him down, and Rabbi Shimon sees this, meaning Rabbi Shimon, who's now operating from a Chachma perspective, is looking at this Yid who's bent under the crucible of Bina and thinking that the goal in this world is to tolerate, instead of understanding that the true goal of this world is to be mit'aneg al Hashem, to find pleasure with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to go from Bina into Chachma. So Rabbi Shimon says, okay, now we have to elevate this stuckness of Bina back into a place of Chachma, because I just entered into the place of Chachma. I just affixed my eyes upwards. So he says, I see that you have this burdensome baggage upon you. Who are you? Who are you, and why are you carrying it, ultimately? Amrele Yuda Ana. I'm a Yid. I'm a Yid. Hilu, that's the answer as to why we're carrying the baggage. I'm a Yid. And the baggage that a Yid carries is a heavy baggage, because we've had to become profoundly proficient in the world of Bina. B'nei Bina, Yemei Shmoina, a person has to be profoundly proficient in the world of Bina in order to function in this world, and that's where the burden comes from. So Rabbi Shimon says to him, Amar milin chadasin vada yuma do legabech. And Rabbi Shimon hears him and he says, I am certainly going to hear new things from you today. Meaning there's going to be an awakening here. There's going to be a clarification that in truth, all of Bina belongs to the ultimate bittul of Chachma. Amar leila anhu arich. Rabbi Shimon says to this old man, where's your land? Amar le diure have beinan pri shemidbara da havinan meshtadle ba'iraisa v'hashta asina li yeshuva lemesav b'tzela de kutsh b'richu be'ilan yoma diyar chashvida. Zak the Heilige Saba from the desert, he said, I am a Jew who comes from the desert, and I live in the desert with those who seclude themselves away in the desert, where we spend our time studying the Torah. And now I've come to your land. Now I've come to the Yeshuv in order to be in the shade of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the Heilige light of this 7th month, meaning the Yarach HaIsanim, the process of Rosh Hashanah all the way to Shmini Atzeres, this 7th place, this world of Bina, the world of Bina, which is the light of the 7th, the light of Bina, which is Eim HaBanim Smecha, the 7th tikkun, which is the tikkun of the MS, as the Kamarna Rebbe in his Zohar Chai explains, Burach Kadsho, how Shvi'i over here represents Bina. He says, I come from a place of Bina. And I understand ultimately that in the desert, the place of Bina can lose sight of its main goal. And therefore, I've come to sit in the shade of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the shade of Chachma, in the shade of the Shechina, in the shade of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai for these days of the 7th month in order to properly understand it. Chadi Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon laughs because he sees that, okay, good, Bina has come to Chachma in order to be Nimtak. And we're going to look at things from a Chachma perspective now. Amar Nisiv. Sit down. There's no more walking. There's a place of sitting and menucha in the place of Chachma. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has arranged all of this pagisha, this re-encounter of the showdown between Chachma and Bina. Rabbi Shimon says, now I know with certainty that I'm going to hear new old words from you, new ancient words. This is a language that the Zohar HaKadosh uses that represents the very paradox that we're discussing. Milin chadasin atikin, milin atikin chadasin. Atikin, old age, is chachma. Old age is the wisdom, the calmness, the cool and collected nature of Moshe Rabbeinu. The youthfulness, the chadasin, the newness comes from the fierceness of Bina. The Zohar HaKadosh has the proper way of balancing ancientness and newness, chachma and Bina, to the degree that it becomes the revelation of light of Keser, as revealed in the fact that Rabbi Shimon can shift from Bina into Chachma and Chachma back into Bina because he comes from that place of Keser. He comes from that Leis Smoila B'hai Atika, that place that Moshe Rabbeinu drew him down from. And in that place we see that both are unified. Mi'inan milin chadasin atikin, new old worlds. Chadasin atikin is Rosh Tevas Chachma Ilah, because Chachma Ilah represents that place where Chachma and Bina are unified. We're going to hear these new ancient words that are planted out there in the desert, that are going to teach us about this 7th month, about Bina. So Rabbi Shimon says, okay, we have a guest from the desert, we have a Bina Dika guest, we have a guest who's going to teach us all about Bina. He's going to teach us the lights of Bina that are planted in the desert. He's going to teach us about the 7th month. He's going to teach us about Bina. He's going to teach us about the particularization and concealment and darkness. But here's where Rabbi Shimon is engaging in the real re-education of the whole process. With this question, he's reframing the whole thing, and he's saying, now that you've come to me on dry land, now that you've come to me by Chachma, I'm going to show you how all of the Bina and all of the Tzabrachenkait and all of the darkness and all of the Marar and all of the Mariris and all of the Yisur, and they're all Muvuttal, B'tachlis, Abital when it comes to the perspective of Chachma. That from the higher perspective, the Yichud Tata is Nichla within the Yichud Ilah. And so Rabbi Shimon says, saying to the Chavraya, we're going to hear new ancient words that are planted in the desert with regards to this 7th month, with regards to Bina. But Rabbi Shimon then points into a question, and he puts this messenger, this Saba, from the desert into question. V'amai is parshus sanhashta me'midbara l'meis liyeshuva. But pray tell, I'm asking you, what made you leave the Midbar and come to the Yeshuv? What made you leave that territory of Bina? What made you leave the severity and the darkness of the desert and enter into a place of civilization to try and find some comfort? Amar lehahu Saba. That Saba, which is the gematria of Samech Gimel, which is the shame of Sag, which is the light of Bina. So the Saba says, B'she'ilta da yadana dechachmasa gabech umila achmatu l'rekia dechachmasa. He says, by dint of the fact that you've asked this question, I see, says the Saba, that you carry with you the words of Chachma, that your words are rooted in Chachma, and that your words ascend to the Rekia of Chachma. What's the Saba saying? He's saying, you're asking me if I'm a Bina Dika mensch, and I come from a place of Bina in the Midbar, and I want to learn more about Bina, which is the 7th month, and I want to learn more about Choshech, and I want to learn more about the Tzimtzum and all of the severity of what it means to be a human being in the world. then why not stay in the midbar? Why not stay in the midbar where those things are clear? Stay there, stay in the darkness. Elama, Rabbi Shimon says, by dint of the fact that you knew to come to Chachma in order to find the pitron and the answer to the Bina itself, shows that you understand fundamentally that Chachma is the fundamental way to see things, and that Bina just works for Chachma. And Avada Bina can provide the most fundamental revelation that Chachma itself can't reveal, but not without fundamentally returning back to Chachma. And so Rabbi Shimon is showing this Saba from the Midbar that you're carrying the heavy baggage of Bina. You're wanting to know about Bina. You're forgetting about the Chachma. And so come and sit and let's learn about the Chachma, Bezras Hashem. Pasachahu Saba v'Yamar. The Saba opens up and he says, and now we're going to go down into the place of darkness, into the place of the Midbar, into the place of concealment, into the Chametz, in order to understand that be'emes la'amisaso, all of it is just playfulness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealing in the Welt so that we can properly receive the fullest level of Chachma. And we can go through the whole, I haven't even gotten past the page we're going to stop at, but we're going to stop with the Sugya of Purim. We're going from Rosh Hashanah into Purim. Pasachahu Saba v'Yamar, that Saba opens up and he says, Ubemidbar asher ra'isi asher nasacha Hashem lekecha ka'asher yisa ishas beno. The Saba, now having learned the secret of Chachma, and that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is saying, you teach us about the seventh month. You teach us about Bina. You teach us about the fact that Chachma is really there. So he starts off with a pasuk that says that in the desert that I saw and I beheld the vision, that we were carried from HaKadosh Baruch Hu like a father carries his son. Meaning to say that language of Re'iyah in the Midbar, that language of the Zakuf Rabbi Shimon Einav, that he enters into that place of Chachma. Now this person, this Saba, the Sag of the Midbar, which is Bina, is now describing how, oh, you're right, Rabbi Shimon, there was a light of Chachma there. I saw it in the desert. What did we see? We saw how the relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael was like a father and his son. Again, that Saba could very well be an old man with his son, just as Rabbi Shimon was walking with his son. It's all about reorienting the relationships in our lives in accordance with the refinement, the gentleness that has to perpetually refine, and allow relationships to prosper in the way that they need to. What is this pasuk coming to tell us? I understand that you carried us in the midbar, but what does it mean that I saw? What did I see? And again, this is the Bina speaking. This is the wanderer from the desert. That when HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought the Jewish people into the desert, he brought them into the sharpest desert in the world, to the highest level of concealment, to the abject of the abject, to the Chalal HaPanui itself, to the absence of all things. When we taste the negativity, we taste it down to the very bottom. Hashem brought us into the Midbara Takifa. Roshei Tevos Meis. As the pasuk says, Nachash, Saraf, V'akrav V'gomer, a place of concealment, a place of the serpent itself. Umidbara di'ihu takif meshar midbarim da alma. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us to the Chalal HaPanui itself. He took us to the depth of Bina. My time, why? Why did Hashem do this? Why did Hashem force us into the depth of Bina, into the concealment of it all? Begin to hahu shaisa denafku Yisrael mimitzrayim v'ishtalim u'lishisin ravavon. That in the moment that Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim, and we had a moment of fulfillment on the level of 600,000, Istakif Malchusa Kadisha ve'istalek al kula. The light of Malchus ascended back up to a place of Chachma for a moment, and there was a full and utter rectification, and all concealment was removed. V'sihira is nahira to kedin is kafka malka chayva sitra achra. And the moon was in its state of illumination. Malchus went all the way back up to Chachma. Alst was Git. It was only Ayin. It was only Chachma after Yitzias Mitzrayim when we left the Sha'arim of Bina. And the Sitra Achra was pushed down. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu drew us through the desert, this desert of concealment. Because after the Chachma, we have to work our way through the Bina again. The Eser v'Shaltana the Samach Mem Chayva the Yehudile Mamish. Kadosh Baruch Hu took us from Chachma, and he dragged us down into the place of death, into Gehenna itself, into the place of the Samach Mem, into Shushan Habira, into concealment, the place of concealment. Why? Begin letavre tukve v'chela ulekata taresha uleakaf yelei delo yishleit. The reason Hashem took Kedusha of Chachma and drags it down and schleps it down into the worlds of separation, into the world of Bina, into the Midbar, is so that we can refine it to the degree that it no longer exists, to reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down below in the place where there's so much resistance, resistance upon resistance upon resistance. And it's specifically there when the light of Or Ein Sof is Miskala, when Chachma goes down into the worlds of separation, that's where the Biru is going to take place. Kulam b'Chachma is Bariru. That Chachma is the sherish of the Zivug, and that without Chachma there's nothing. It's Yamosa v'lo b'Chachma. And Klal Yisrael had to be the Chachma that gets dragged down into the desert that HaKadosh Baruch Hu enables to exist in the world so that there can be the Tesefes Kishat v'chulei v'chulei. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted us, ourselves, to be koifef that darkness. Ve'elamale dechavu, and had we not transgressed and had the time been right, Yisrael bali could shabrichu la'avid le me'alma. Had we not deviated, had we not fallen, so it would have been time for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to remove all of the bina and the concealments from the Welt, all of the chitzonias from the Welt, and there should have been a revelation of a fundamental and purified Chachma. Va'alda e'avir loin ba'achsante va'avde v'chulke mamash. Kiven the chavu become a zimnin nachish loin chivya. But because we transgressed and because we fell down and because we got stuck in all of those stuck places, we were bit by the Nachash. We didn't transform the Nachash into Mashiach. We didn't transform the Nun of the Nachash, which is the Nun of Bina, into the secret of the Mem Yud, which is the secret of Chachma and Bina together, which is the Yam that makes the word Nachash into Mashiach, because Mashiach and Nachash are the same gematria. We got stuck in the Bina. We got stuck in the Nun, which makes it a Nachash, and we didn't know how to break open the Nun, which is Bina, to reveal the Yud, which is Chachma, and the Mem, which is also Bina, to reveal there's Chachma and Bina within all things. And instead, we couldn't reveal Mashiach, and we got stuck with the Nachash. And in that place, it became the battle of Klal Yisrael Keneged the Nachash, Chachma Keneged Bina. Yisrael Malchu Reish B'Kadmisa, we fight first and foremost against the head of the Nachash and the secret of breaking it from the strongest place in the beginning. But we didn't know how to fundamentally break free from it. And then the snake hits us, and they all fell in the midbar. They fell into the death of Bina, into separation. And it's the kiyum of that Nachash having shlita over Nishmas Yisrael Chas v'Shalom, where the Bina was raging, but there was no revelation of Chachma. And there was 40 years of suffering, that 40 years of Bina itself, Lakabel Mem Malkos de Beidina, to receive Mem Malkos, a full measure of Malkos, until the Chasarachas. This is what was seen. Meaning to say, what did they see there? They saw the real process of Chachma and Bina. They saw what happens when a person gets too stuck in Bina. They saw what happens when a person doesn't know how to maintain the secret of Chachma. They saw it from the perspective of Chachma because they understood what was missing. Ra'isa be'enayu havechamin lahu mare de midbara azil kopes kaime v'notle achsante v'adbe. What they saw were the forces of darkness. They saw concealment revealed. They saw Bina in its congealment, this worldliness in its congealment, running the show. They saw the darkness that continued to persist. Minalan. How do we know that this was all taking shape, the birurim that were taking place in the desert? When Klal Yisrael found themselves in the desert prior to the final rectification of entering into Eretz Yisrael, which is a return back to Chachma, which is why we have to draw Moshe Rabbeinu from his place in Bina, the burial place that is inappropriate for him, which is the place of Bina, and to draw him back into the place of Chachma and the secret of Mibein Shnei Akruvim, which is Rosh Tevos Moshe. But as Nivhulu Elufei Edom, that the Alufei Edom, what are the Alufei Edom? That's Bina in its ferocity. That's the desert. That's the Misa Samalachim. That's the Nachash and the Saraf and the Akrav. They rejoice over Klal Yisrael's transgressions. But then at the end, when we finally rectify, when we come to realize that all of the shlita that the Yetzer has had on us is only so that the Yetzer should be burned in its own strength, and that will overcome it over and over and over, to reveal the light of Chachma, to reveal the Tahara, to reveal the holiness of each and every Yid. As long as the battle is still raging, it's not yet clear. That light of Chachma is not yet revealed. The Anan says this Saba that comes from the group of the individuals in the Midbar, who's describing what he sees in the Midbar and intimating to Rabbi Shimon that he understands the secret of the Chachma that Rabbi Shimon is hinting to. V'anan oifhachi is pashana me'yeshuva lemidbar takifa. We also decided to accept upon ourselves, just like Klal Yisrael did, to leave civilization, to leave Chachma, and to go down into this severity of the desert, to go down into the realm of Bina, ulayna teiman ba'iraisa, and to learn Torah there, layna teiman, to descend downwards and to learn Torah. Layna teiman ba'iraisa, to study the Torah of Eish Das Lamo, of Mipi HaGvura. Begin la akafia lahahu sitra. Why? Because we want to negate severity. We want to undo the forces of negativity. We want to undo the darkness. That when Chachma descends down into Bina and it can hold itself there, the Bina reveals itself to be working at the service of Chachma. And so there's certain tzaddikim who go down, they go away from the Yishuv, and they go into that territory of Bina in order to be koife it from within, in order to undo it from within, to force the nachash to empty itself out, like Rabbi Nachman describes the tzaddik that goes into the mouth of the nachash itself, and by going into the mouth of the nachash itself, it forces the nachash, so to speak, to vomit up the neshamos that have been stuck, which is the secret of going into the heart of Bina on Rosh Hashanah and then drawing that light back into Yerushalayim, which is Echad Shushtaim, Uman B'Yerushalayim, the secret of Bina within Chachma. We go into the desert in order to undo the severity of the snake. Visu, and furthermore, says the Saba. Furthermore, it's not just to undo Bina. There's something to be learned in Bina. We've come to retrieve that which must be grabbed hold of from the Yetzirah and schlep it back into Chachma. In that place of severity, it's the only place that the Torah is going to actually leave its mark. It's the only place that the Torah hits. It's the only place that the Torah settles. For there's no light other than the light that ascends out of darkness itself. That when we have the ability of overcoming the side of negativity, the side of concealment, the side of Bina Kavyachol, and finding a Kadosh Baruch Hu there, then the grandeur of a Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to come out again, because we understand that Chachma is the Iker. But if you go down into Bina and you bring it back into Chachma, that's going to reveal the light of Keser. But again, what Rabbi Shimon was reminding, and what this Saba already knows, is that that's only done when you remember that the Chachma is the main thing. This Shliach from the Midbar comes out with the heavy-some burden, and Rabbi Shimon sees him, he says, oh, another person who's too stuck in Bina, who needs a tune-up, who needs to remember that the Iker is Chachma. And then they get reminded that the Iker is Chachma, and then they go back down into the world of Bina to refine it. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to find us from within darkness. And there's no goodness that comes about any other way other than the refinement of negativity. When an individual descends down onto a path of twistedness and they elevate themselves out of it, that's when the grandeur of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to come out most intensely. And this is the fullness of all fullness. The full unity is good and bad together in one, in the secret of Or V'choshech, because be'emes leis smoila b'hayatika. And then after unifying Toiv and Ra together, we come to a higher level of Toiv, a higher level of Odioter Tov, specifically through the concealment of Bina. And the only goodness is the goodness that comes about by way of the subduing and the transformation of the opposition. And this is where the grandeur of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be revealed, and this is going to be our avodah of dragging the Bina back up into the Chachma. And yes, we have to remember that the Chachma is the Iker, and then we can go down into Bina, and then bring Bina back up into Chachma, and then go into Keser. But not, God forbid, if we forget that the Shorish of Bina is ultimately in Chachma, and it's Abba ve'ima, or train loyan delomis parshin, and every level of Ani has to be measured against the Ayin, and every level of severity has to be sweetened in the level of simplicity and purity and cleanliness and goodness and simple joy and tamimus. Hashta de mata zimna de pulchana kadisha de sitve. Bahai toiv estalik yikare. And this is where the goodness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be revealed. And this is going to be the full unity. This is going to be the true rectification. Va'anan adhashta yasivna teman kol yuma shasa. And we sit there all year around. We sit in the desert all year around. Again, hinting to the fact that he knows the secret of Chachma. He says, I see. The drasha is on the word re'iyah, reminding Rabbi Shimon that we understand, Bina understands the significance of Chachma. It just needs to be reminded of the hyper significance of Chachma, because Bina on its own can seemingly reach a place higher than Chachma. And when that happens, a person loses sight of the main Nakuda, and then they have to come back onto the Yishuv and to get the light of Chachma from Rabbi Shimon. But this Saba is saying we sat there, we sat in the desert, and we also had the ability to draw down the light of Re'iyah in the desert itself. So he's saying we know that the goal is Chachma in that place as well. We're not stuck completely in Bina, but we needed that tune-up. And that's where the goodness is going to come from. But now he says, we're not sitting there anymore. Why? We usually sit there, begin Akafia de Midbar Lahu Sitra, to negate and to subdue the other side, to subdue the left side of things, to subdue the hyper awareness of the Bina and the Gvura and the Tzimtzum of it all. Ahashta damata zimna de pulchana kadisha de sitre de kedusha ahadrana li yeshuva de temun ihu pulchuna delay. But now says the Saba, now it's the fullest expression of it. Now it's the fullest expression of Bina. And when Bina is in its ferocity in the 7th month, when it's the Bina of Bina, where we run the risk of being susceptible to looking at the Bina too intensely and celebrating the darkness too intensely and forgetting about the light of goodness that rests at the heart of everything and forgetting about the Or Ki Tov and the ability to be mamtik everything with one flick of the eye upwards, to run all the way up to Keser Ilah, to run deeper and deeper and deeper into the recesses of the infinite, to draw down more and more insight, to draw down more and more confidence, more and more faith. When we forget about that in those times of the 7th month, when Bina is in its strength, and where the Zman of Bina and the Makom of Bina are raging in their intensity, that's when we have to come to you in order to find that Yishuv Hadas. Rabbi Shimon is referred to as the Yishuv over here. The Yishuv is Chachma. Moishav Tov Yashavta. The ability to find calmness, cool, collected calmness. As the Mayan HaChachma, the book of Moshe Rabbeinu teaches us that the highest darga in the world is Yishuv Hadas. That's the level of the Chachma within Keser. So we came, for Rosh Hashanah, we came to you, Rabbi Shimon. We came to ensure that we connect ourselves to the Chachma. V'su, and furthermore, the Hashta Rosh Hashanah Mata Zimna Dahahu Chivya L'mitzvah Dina Makayim Kutch B'richu V'Teman Ihu Shalad to begin Kach Nafka Miteman V'Asim Yeshua. And furthermore, this is the time where the Nachash, where the Chivya, where the Chametz, where the Yitzhahara, which is the Malach HaMaves, which goes up and it comes back down, and it gives us tastes of death by way of our separation from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the sadness that we have over our separation. And because it's the time of that intensification, so we want to kind of leave. We want to go to the Yishuv and we want to check in with the light of Chachma. And now the Saba is going to give another teaching. We're going to go weiter. The Saba is going to give another teaching about what's taking place on Rosh Hashanah when Malchus goes up theoretically to Bina, and it seems that all of the dinim are coming out, and it seems that there's so much severity, and it seems that there's difficulty, and it seems to be an awakening of all the Gevura. And then we're going to see the hidden secret of the Kol of the Shofar, which goes all the way through Bina, and then it goes all the way up through Bina into a place of Chachma, and the secret of the Chachma Stima'a in the redness of the face of the Baal Tokeya, which transforms all Gvuros into their true source in Chachma. Kulam b'Chachma is Bariru, and that's going to be the Hamtaka. That's going to be the light of Rabbi Shimon within the Bina of the Chodesh Hashvi'i. It's going to be the light of the Shofar, which is the light of Harim Koilach Keshofar, which is the light of Chachma within Bina. Pasachahu Saba v'Yamar. The Saba opens up his mouth again to teach a teaching to Rabbi Shimon b'Chavrayev about what it means to have that element of Bina. Tiku b'Chodesh Shofar b'Kesed Yom Chagenu. Blow the shofar in the new year in the day that the moon is covered over. Now is the time where great severity of Bina, of that intensity and Simsum is reawoken upon the world. And as a result of the Simsum, by way of the gradations of concealment, ultimately the Simsum gives shape to Sitra Achra, that which appears to be removed from the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, anytime there's an awakening of a Simsum, as the Yosher Divrei Levav says about Rosh Hashanah, that there's there's a reawakening of the Tzimtzum, so there's also going to be a reawakening of the Yetzer Hara and a time of Din. Kivan the iu is takef salik v'chafya l'sihira t'laynahir nuhura. Suddenly, when negativity feels that it has another moment to cover over the goodness that we believe in ourselves and the ability to overcome anger and the ability to cleanse ourselves in the way that we need to, so the Setra Achra is awoken and it goes up and it covers over the moon. It conceals the moon. It hides the light of the moon to ensure that the light of the moon should not shine and that it should not be filled Mesitra Dedina as a result of the din. Kedein kol alma ihu bedina iloin v'tatayin v'kruza kriz b'kul rekiyan is tkinu kursa dedina lemare dekula ihu bay lemedan v'raza hacha v'ishanyirlan b'midbara amai etayar dina ilah biyomda. And what happens on that day when the moon is covered over to protect itself from the Sitra Achra, and when it's covered over by the Sitra Achra, the entire world stands in a place of din. Bina is raging. Above and below, there are announcements going out throughout all of the Rikian, throughout all of the celestial chambers. Prepare the chair of judgment, prepare the throne of judgment for the master of judgment. For everybody is going to be judged on that day in the secret of what we've illuminated here in the desert with regards to what is it about this day? What is it about this day that's scary? Where does the Bina of this day come from? But the truth of the matter is that all of the secrets and all holiness and all beauty and all value, all of it depends on the seventh level, on the level of Bina. We need the midbar, we need the concealment, because it's that concealment of Bina that's going to come back into Chachma and enable Chachma to reveal its true depth and its true capacity. And when the time of Bina is awoken, and this ascendant level of Shvi'i, this ascendant level of Rosh Hashanah, of Yeracha Isanim, is the level of Bina, which is the level of Alma Asi, the level of experiencing the flow of Gan Eden in a person's real-time experience, where Chachma is drawn down into Bina. Mine Naharin Kol Butzinin V'Kol Kedushin V'Kol Birchin. It's from this place of Bina in its refinement, when it draws down the light of Chachma, that is going to be the source of all of the lights and all of the illumination and all holiness and all blessing. The Kadmatizim Tute Birchen V'Kidushin Anhara. And when it's time for the blessings and the holiness and the light to descend down, so now it's time for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to see, how can I bestow this goodness? This is what he's saying over here is so incredible, that people are wondering, why is the world in din? Why is the world in a state of din during Rosh Hashanah? Why is the world in a state of fear? And Zat the Baal HaMidbar, Zat the Saba from the Midbar, this light of Bina that is now being illuminated in the calmness and the Chachma of the Yishuv, the Moshav Tav Yashav of Rabbi Shimon, saying the only reason there's an awakening of severity is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bestow a profound level of goodness. There's a profound level of goodness that is now going to be flowing into the world by way of Alma Da'asi, by way of Alemechat Tira B'chayecha, by way of the refinement and the Tainuk HaElyon that descends down through the Yichud of Chachma and Bina as it drips down into the mind of the human being, which is the Zer Anpin, and it enables us to unify with existence and our own experiences, which is the secret of the Yichud of Kutchabricha V'Shchintei, and drawing it all the way down to Malchus. When that light is prepared to come down, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to ensure that the right receptacles are going to receive what it needs to receive, and that it shouldn't be taken by something insignificant, and it shouldn't miss its point. V'kadmati zimna lechatute birchen v'kidushin lanhara ba'ila ashkacha b'chol tikunei da'almin kula. When it comes time to bestow all of this blessing and all of this goodness, it's time for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to come down and look and to ensure the righteousness and the refinement of all of the vessels. And in truth, the way to determine whether the vessels are worthy of receiving the light of Chachma, so that's all going to be proven from the vessels themselves. It all comes about by Isarusa dilatata. That's the light of Bina, Yagata umatzata. And then a person has the schos of the gift of Amuna, which is Chachma. And if the vessels are prepared, if the bina is refined, then it's worthy of receiving the light. So then there's going to be the din that ensures that the ha'ara and the light that needs to come back down is not going to come down so that it's not misdistributed. So that the light of Chachma should find the Kelim Ru'im. And because there's a din that's taking place in order to refine the vessels, anytime that the din is awoken, that there's a symptom again of Bina, so then the Kitrug is awoken again. And that's where all the fear of Rosh Hashanah comes from. Begin the Intoin Le Inun Chayve, because the concealment is going to be removed. Begin the Aleaksiv Ulechol Tachlis Uchoiker. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking to refine the Tachlis. The Tachlis of all things is the unity of Chachma and Bina. The Chafya L'Sihare Amai, but why are they covering over the moon? Why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu covering over the moon? Begin the Leis Ti Uvda the Kutchabarichu the Uvde L'Avde Yode. The reason that HaKadosh Baruch Hu enables the moon to be concealed is so that we can come to it on our own hands. V'hahu sitra achra kaime klipa takifa delo yachel leisbare bar hahu ita de kutshabrichu. And in that time of that concealment that's preparing the world to receive the chachma that it needs to receive, so there's a concealment and a congealment, and then there's a darkness because it's all bina. And it's a day of din, it's a day of the nesira, of ima, of zun, that the moichin of bina leave. And there's a level of darkness and a strength of concealment that emerges onto the world that cannot be broken in any other way than the simple eitzah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives to Klal Yisrael, which is Tiku b'choy da shofar v'keser liyom chagenu. Blow the shofar. Chachmahu, it's the light of Chachma that's breaking the bina. Begin letabra hahu kasa de eschafya sihara v'leinohir, in order to break that concealment that is blighting, that is blocking out the illumination of the moon, the illumination of Malchus and Chachma. The kadmet ari Yisrael letata b'shofar hu kala denafak me shofar batash ba'avira ubaker rekian ad desalpe legabe hahutinra takifa. And when we blow the shofar, that voice goes up, Zeranpin goes up, and it breaks through and it shatters the air pockets and columns that it needs to shatter, and it goes up, up, up until it comes face to face with that great concealment that covers over the moon. Ishkach ve'eshkach is arusa derachme, and it awakens an overflowing nature of mercy and compassion. Kedein hahu salik the salik v'kaima le'ela is arbev kedein hahu kala kaima. This is the confusion of the Sitra Achra. It hears this voice. It hears the secret of Chachma that pierces through the concealment of Bina. And it's confused. Ve'aver hahudina, and it lets go of the din. The kevan dilatata is sarusa rachme hachinami le'ela is sarer shofra achra ila. And because we blew the shofar from down here, we awoke in that chachma beway of Mesiras Nefesh through the thicket of Bina itself down here. So too, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to awaken the shofar acher from above, which is the cherus, which is the yichud of chachma and Bina in the light of Keser, of Tetoru, of the light of Keser, v'afik kala di'ihu rachme, and a voice of Rachamim comes out. V'et aro kala bekala, and one voice meets the other voice, and the voice of Rachamim that comes above, from below to above, and the voice of Rachamim that comes from above to below, they meet, and it's kol b'yachta v'rachme u'besarusa delatata etayar hachinami la'ela, and the awakening of below from the realm of Bina, awakening the desire to find the light of Chachma from within Bina itself is what draws down that light. V'itei mahech yachal l'kaime kala delatata or isarusa delatata. And if you're going to ask the question, how is it possible that the work from down here below, the work in the world of Bina, is going to awaken the light of Chachma? How could it be that the lower can awaken the higher? How could it be that even though we're going to taste the light of Chachma, we still need to hold on to that light of Bina? Tachazi, come and see. Al matata kaim l'kable tadir. The lower world, Malchus, which goes up to Bina, is always prepared to receive. It's referred to as a precious stone. And the ascendant world of Chachma only reveals itself in accordance to the shape in which that vessel has prepared itself. That any color can come from above, but the only way that the color is going to be refracted is in accordance with the formation of the vessel. If it's going to be received with the light of the face, with pleasantness, with goodness down below, so too it's going to be met with pleasantness and goodness above. And if the person is receiving it by way of sadness and a person feels strange and people are strange, then ultimately the entire world is going to appear strange. And this is why we have to awaken the depth of Simcha on Rosh Hashanah, the depth of Simcha, of awakening the Chachma within the Bina. The joy of the individual is what draws down for them another level of joy, which is the joy from above. So too down here when we crown ourselves with Chachma and Bina in this lower world, we awaken that flow above. And it's for this reason that Klal Yisrael awaken first and foremost the voice of the shofar, which is the unification of the fire, the water, and the breath of Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes, the light of Zer Anpin that awakens the coal from within Bina to go all the way back up and uncover the light of Chachma. It Avid Chad, so all of those Esha, Maya, Verucha, the Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes, or the Chachma, the Bina, and the Das, all become one. V'salka le'ela, and they become a singular point of Malchus that goes all the way up. Ubatash b'hai Evin Tava, and it encounters that beautiful stone, that Malchus Agnuza Beradla, that secret of Keser Elyon Elav Nikra. The Itztave be'inun Gvanin dahai Kala, and it becomes colored by the colors of this voice. Ukadein Kama de Itchazisas Hachi Mashach le'ela. And in accordance with the strength that we have in preparing ourselves to be vessels to draw down the light of Chachma, Bina, and Das from above in the guise of Chachma itself, so then we're going to draw it down. V'kivan de itkanat b'hekala, and because it's all been refined, then the Chachma has broken through the concealment of Bina, and it has gone back to the source in Keser to draw down the light of Chachma back into Bina in order to ensure that the Saba, who represents the Bina of the Midbar, always remember the secret of the Chachma that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was revealing. Rach minafka me'ela v'shayin alav it kalila b'rach that the rachamim from below to above and from above to below meet and were circled and encircled by rachamim from the inside and the out, mitzad chachma and mitzad bina. Ukedein is arbeb sitra achar, and the sitra achar is completely confused because now from within bina itself, which is the tzimtzum, it's suddenly seeing the light of chachma and it doesn't know what to do with itself. This is why Rabbi Nachman's ramazim for shofar are Az Yamale Schoik Pinu Ulashanenu Rina. Schoik Pinu Ulashanenu Rina is the secret of shofar because it's the sweetening of the bina by revealing the joy within it. And the Sitra Achar doesn't know what to do. It feels that Simsum and Bina were just awoken. How could it be that I'm encountering Chachma here? And that's how the secret of the shofar pushes away the Sitra Achar, because we reveal the light of Chachma and Bina. And when we do that, so then Bina no longer becomes the place that the Yetzer Hara thinks that it can work. And what it thought was its home suddenly becomes the death trap, and it's swallowed up by the severity of Bina and sweetened by Chachma itself. And its strength is weakened, and it can no longer create issues for Klal Yisrael. And that light of Malchus, that light goes up to Bina, and not only is it illuminated with the light of Bina, but it also has the illumination of the light of Chachma. When does it exist in that ascendant illumination? The full rectification of all of this takes shape on Yom HaKippurim. Rosh Hashanah starts the beginning of the Nesira, and then we go through the Aseres Yemei Tshuva, and the Gemara HaNesira takes shape on Yom HaKippurim, where we allow severity to take on the most significance that we enable it to, but we realize that it's a joke. We feed it the Sir La'azazel, we pretend, yeah, darkness, concealment, you get what you get, you're real, there's ghosts in the world, v'chule, v'chule, and we are mamish like denying it. We say, don't stay with us when we're with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you want us to pretend you're real, we'll pretend you're real. We'll pretend you're super real. We'll send the whole ceremony out into the desert to acquiesce to your desire to be made real. Okay, Sitra Achra, that's what we say on Yom Kippurim, because we're so fundamentally aware that, yeah, Kadosh Baruch Hu still wants there to be concealment in the Welt, and until there's not concealment in the Welt, there's going to be concealment in the Welt. But we're no longer afraid of the concealment. On Yom Kippurim, there's a true unity between Rabbi Shimon and the Saba, between Chachma and Bina, where we reach the level of Keser, of Hashem Hu Elokim, where we come to realize that everything is Chachma, and even the Bina, which we can take seriously as long as we live in the space of Chachma, which is why we go through this whole process of the Sir La'azazel, and that's how we're going to come to Mirz Hashem to Purim. When is it? When is this full rectification take place? It takes place on the day of Yom HaKippurim. Umiyom de Kippura is nahir mehahu eventava de nihiru de laela migoi nihiru de alma de asi. Because on Yom Kippurim, that malchus, that place of concealment where the gurus of bina seem to be the most significant thing. On Yom Kippurim, it's the hamtakas of dinim of bina beklaliusa b'sharasho, and we go up to bina, but we don't only go up to bina, we go even higher into the place of chachma, which is what takes place at the end of in Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim. And on Yom Kippurim, where everything is refined, we drag Bina all the way back up to its place, to its highest source, to the light of the Nehiru, the Alma, the Asi, the light of that future light that trips forth from within Bina. Ukedain metatkin Yisrael letata chad seir umeshadrin lahaim medbara takifa diihushalta aleha. And in accordance with this awakening and the samtakas adinim that is taking place on Yom Kippurim, the fullness of Chachma, so then on that day we take a seir and we send it out into that thickness of the midbar, which is the place of concealment. Vahahu sitra achraihu, and that side is the other side. What is that other side? What are we trying to be metakin on Yom HaKippurim? We're trying to be metakin the nekuda emtsiusa de charivu de alma. Nekuda de emtsiusa de charivu de alma. Begin the kol charivu vishmamoin minehu. Sitra achra deshalit aleha. This desert that's being addressed on Yom Kippurim with the confidence of the Chachma that we're holding on to is the thickest expression of the desert. It's the center point of the desert. It's the Emsiusa de Chiruva, the center point of the Churban, which is very important to understand, because when we can look at Churban and we can look at Tohu and we can look at Shviras HaKelim and say, well, this is random. This happened accidentally. This is a scattering. Because scattering and chaos denies the center. It denies the notion of a center. The center cannot hold, and mere anarchy is unleashed upon the world. The notion of a center point that holds everything together is the opposite of tohu. And so we see from the perspective of Yom Kippurim, even the midbar, which is the source of the Churban itself, the source of the Malchin Demisu and the Tohu and Bina, when it goes awry, without Chachma, even there we see there's an Akuda MCU. That's what we're addressing. We're calling a spade, and we're saying the darkness is also revelation from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and just like any revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is at an innermost point, and this is when we're going to deal with it. This is when we domesticate the darkness to reveal that it is simply a handmaiden to the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's great revelations. Nukuda MCU the Chariva the Alma begin the whole Chariva v'Shemamun Minehu Sitra Achra v'Shalat Aleh. This place in the midbar that we send the Sir Azazel out into, that's that darkness. That's the darkness of the darkness, the center point, the void that draws all things away from themselves, that gravitational force downwards, that death drive that seeks to destroy everything in its source. But the moment you start talking about the Nekuda Pnimius of the Churban, you also have to talk about the Nekuda Pnimius of Kedusha, which is the innermost light of Chachma. That's the secret of the center point of the world, the Evan Hashasiya, the Alda Kaime Yerushalayim, the MCUsa, the Chol Yeshuva, the Alma. And this is the secret of Yerushalayim, the Hamtaka of all of those dinim. The Chol Yeshuva, the Alma betrain Nekudin is Parshat Malko Shmaya, Sitra de Kedusha, Chadile, V'chad the Alma de Asi. Not only does the notion of the innermost point of concealment awaken to the mind the innermost point of Kedusha, which is Yerushalayim, but when we grab hold of the innermost point of Kedusha, which is the Chachma of Yerushalayim, there's another innermost point that is revealed, buried underneath that first innermost point. Because when a person attaches themselves to Chachma, Memela, they're going to be able to reach Keser. Because Chachma is the Yud, and the Kutzah Shel Yud is Keser. And Memela, if I dig down deep into Chachma, then I'll also have the ability of grabbing hold of Keser. So yeah, you show me the Nekuda, the Cheruva of the Midbar, which is the Nekuda of Bina, but then I awaken the fact that if there's a Nekuda, the Cheruva of Bina, there's also going to be a Nakuda of Kedusha of Chachma, and then hidden within the Nakuda Kedusha of Chachma is going to be a second Nakuda, which is going to be the Nakuda of Keser, which is the light of Yerushalayim Shalmana. So Zok the Heilige Zohar, the Nakuda MCU the Chariva, the Alma begin the Hiu Chariva v'Shemamon Minei Hahu Sitra Achar v'Shlim Alaya. V'Nakuda MCU the Chol Yeshuva Sitra the Kedusha Ihu, and the centermost point where all civilization of Chachma is resting is the secret of Yerushalayim, and this is why Yerushalayim is in the middle of the center. The Chol Yeshuva the Alma betrain Nekuda is Parshas, and in truth, that singular point of Yerushalayim is really 2 points from which all of civilization and all of existence emerges from. Malchus Shmaya Sitra de Kedusha, Chad delay, v'chad de Alma Asi. It's light of Malchus in its refinement when it holds on to its source in Chachma, and it's the second level of Alma Asi, which is going to be drawing down the light of Keser itself. Nekuda Ilah Tamira, there's an ascendant point that hides hidden within Chachma itself, which is the light of Keser. Va'ada Kaima betray Nekudin, and it's over here that there's going to be two nukudos that are revealed. Nukuda delay, kaima tchoisa Yerushalayim, emsiusa de kol yeshuva. Nukuda denatla me'ema ilo temirta. Ihu gan eden de are de kaima be'emseusa de chol alma, de chol sitrin de charivu v'yeshuva, chol sitrin de alma. And this innermost point that's hidden within the innermost point of Chachma of Yerushalayim is going to be the secret of Gan Eden de Ara. It's going to be the Hamshach of Alma de Asi, literally the world of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the place of Gan Eden in this world, surrounded on all sides by the concentric circles. And just as hidden within the Nekuda Pnimius of Chachma in Yerushalayim, there's an inner Nekuda of Gan Eden, which is drawing down the light of Keser. So too in Gan Eden itself, there's going to be the light of Gan Eden, and then there's going to be the innermost light of Keser, which is going to be the Nekuda Tamira de Geniza de Loyada. V'chad amuda na'itz metata la'ela. And in this place, there's one pillar that is planted, that stretches from the bottom all the way up. Goi hahi nekuda. It extends itself from within that point in the center. Umiteman nive mayad is perishu la'abesitra alma. And it's from there that the waters flow forth. It's from there that Chachma comes down. It's from there that the Arba Naharos are Yoitze, Me'eden, Mahashkes Sagan. And then we have the redistribution of the light of Chachma to illuminate the pathways of Bina. Ishtachachu tlos nekudin ba'alma dekaimin da al da kagavna de tlos nekudin da araisa. And we find that there's these 3 points that stand upon themselves, and they're like the 3 points that are unified within the Torah. That's going to be the Nekuda of Bina B'Kedusha, that's going to be the Nekuda of Chachma and the Nekuda of Keser, or Chachma, Bina, and Das. Tachazi, come and see. Hahu Sir the Meshadrin Yisrael Azazel. Hahu Midbara, that goat that Klal Yisrael send into the Midbar, into the place of Bina. We're finally allowing ourselves to look at Bina in its isolation, because we fundamentally know that it's just a joke, and that really that Yom Kippurim is like Yom Kippurim, that really it's the revelation of Purim itself. And we're almost there, Chavra. When we send that Seir La Azazel out, begin the May of Chulke Lahahu Sitra Achra Les Aska Bahadei. What we're doing is we're just distracting Sitra Achra. We're just giving it what it wants, which is attention. And we're saying, yes, we see you, you're real. We see you throughout history. We see you in our own lives. We know how real you are. But at this point, we're going to have to distract you for a second, because we need to have one day where we leave the desert of our lives and we remember the light of Rabbi Shimon, and we remember the illumination of Chachma within Bina itself, so that we can survive the rest of the year. And so what we do is there's a secret where we distract the Sitra Achra, where we put Bina to sleep, where we allow it to engage with negativity to make it think that it's making headway, when in truth we really know the deep secret that it's just appearances. The only thing that's real is the Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what we're doing on that day is we're distracting it. We're making a whole ceremony as if that's the main thing. We're just distracting it. We're distracting the Sitra Achra so that we can be with Hashem in a place of Chachma, so that we can be with Hashem even higher than the Malachim. V'itema train Seirin Amai. And if you want to ask, why do we need 2 goats here? Why do there have to be 2 goats? Chad Hashem, Chad Lahahu Sitra Achra. One for Hashem, one for Chachma, and one for the other side, one for that territory of Bina. Teinachahu Asir L'Sitra Achra. LaHashem Amai. So I understand, says the Zohar HaKadosh, why we have to fend off the demons in the park after dark, right? We have to feed the Sitra Achra what it needs to be distracted. But why are we feeding HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And in here lies the true joke of Yom Kippurim, which is that we think that it's about the Bina of it all, and the Al-Chet of it all, and the Tshuva of it all, which is true also, but that's the choshad that we give to the Sitra Achra to make it think that that's where our minds are at. When in truth, we're entering into Kodesh HaKadoshim. We're entering into Kodesh HaKadoshim, Bad Yilbosh, Bad Kodesh Yilbosh. We're entering into the place of Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik. And so at first glance, you think we understand why we're sending the goat to the other side, because that's the main thing. So then the question is, why are we sending one to Hashem? And the fact that we send the goat Kavyachot to Hashem by way of a korban is going to reveal the true joke of Yom Kippurim, which is that the whole Ganzach is about revealing Chachma. Ela Lamalka, what's the mashal? The mashal is like a king, the Have Argiz Albrei. And here we're returning back to the original frame of the narrative, that Rabbi Elazar was walking with his son, and the Saba was walking with his son. And the pasuk that the Saba brings is HaKadosh Baruch Hu treating us in the midbar like a father and a son. This is the whole Gans Tikkun, the whole relationship. What's the mashal that'll give us a true understanding of what's taking place on Yom Kippur? The Malka Dahave Argiz Albrei, a king who is angry at his son, Karala Santira Hahuda Ovid Dina Bebe Nasha Tadir begin the Izdam and the Mavet Dina Bebrei. He calls upon his lawmaker, he calls upon his punisher in order to come to the palace so that he can figure out how to carry out the punishment on the son of the king. Hahu Santira Chadi. The Santira understood the joke, he laughed at the opportunity. He went into the place where the father and the son would have been eating in order to encounter the son. Amar Santira Argiz Malka Alai. When the son sees him, he says, obviously, the only reason this din is here now is because my father called him upon me. My avid, azal v'itpais b'hadei. So the son didn't spend time with the punisher. He went directly to his father and he said, Dad, I'm sorry. It's clear that you're upset. There's din now. So I'm going to come straight to you. Kivan de ispais b'hadei. So once the son goes directly to the king and they make up and there's a yichud, pakid malka lemevet sudasa ilo le ulabare. Upakid deloy yindabe hahu sintira. Because the king saw that joy and unity had come by way of Malchus reading Chachma without the need to go into Bina, without the need of the Dinim itself. So the king said, okay, let's make a Suda, just you and me, and don't make Bina aware of it. Don't make this punisher aware of it. Labasar ayel hahu sintira. Then this punisher enters in. Amar malka hashta iyanda da mesidasa diila dit kanitat liubari et arif purta. And now he says, King, my king, why shouldn't I partake in this? Why shouldn't I partake in this Suda also? I played a role here. My Avid, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? Kara lememana al Sudasa, he calls the person who's in charge of the Suda. Amarlei itkin midai v'tashave kaime dahahu sentira begin the yachshivs the sa'id kaime midili v'lo yinde dahahu Sudasi akira dechedva dili v'dibrei v'yito ha'chokol v'yazil v'yazile v'yitparish mechedva the Sudasa dilan. The king says as follows. He calls the chef and he says, make a feast for this punisher. And let this punisher think that he's eating from the meal that is prepared for me and my son. But in truth, give him what he needs so that he'll get out of here. Don't give him of our meal. Give him the thing that he's going to think is what he needs so that he can leave us alone. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not do that, if the king didn't give a meal, a consolation meal to this pestering concealment, so then it would have never left because it's not time for the tikkun yet. And this way, by giving it what it wants, we can fully be in a place of chachma. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Klal Yisrael. Azminu train seer and bring me 2 goats, chad li v'chad la'ahu dilatura, and one for the other side. Begin the yachshiv the mesudasa dili ka'achol, so that he should think he's partaking of my feast, and he should think that Yom Kippurim is a day of bina, is a day of severity, is a day of suffering. V'lo yimda the sudasa the chedva achra dilan v'yasiv ahu let him eat what he needs to eat. He won't realize that he's partaking of his own product, and he'll leave the house. Kivan the ima ilah alma the asi asya the mishre goyechala the alma tata ishkacha nihiru. When the light of Chachma descends down into the light of Bina, and it descends all the way down into Malchus, and Malchus now has Chachma and Bina together, with the illumination of the face, there should be no concealment here anymore. The externalization of Bina that the Yetzer Hara thinks we're still struggling with in Yom Kippurim, it needs to be fed, but it's got no place in this Suda. When we get rid of the Sitra Achra, all of the blessings come down, the Chachma shines forth, and we prepare ourselves for the Tzela D'Mehem Nusa, we prepare ourselves for the light of Simcha and the full Yichud. And freedom is present, and Klal Yisrael are able to eat from all of those blessings. The Hakad Alma the Asi Ayel the Alma Tata Vishtachich, the Chadi Alma Tata, Imbanoi Vahai Sudasa Ila, Keden Iu Birich Petura Alman Kula Misparachin Vachol Chidu, Vachol Nuhura da Anpinish Tachachu Teiman, because when a Kadosh Baruch Hu descends down from the higher world and Chachma comes down and it sees the unity that's already taking place in the world of Bina with the king and his son, there's only joy and a reawakening of more and more gladness and more light of Nihiru the unfinished Achutem on the light of Chachma. Lifnei Hashem Tetayru. That on Yom Kippurim we go from Bina into Chachma to draw down the light of Keser, which is the gematria of Tetayru, which is why all of the Kaddichim, the Kedushas on Yom Kippurim in Nusach Svarda Keser. Ksiv v'natan Aaron al shnei hasi'irim goralot goral echad la'Hashem goral echad la'Azazel. And in this place of the clarification between these two sa'arim, we're reaching into the highest place of Keser, which is the secret of that separation that is as fine as a feather. Da'yu hahu chedva da'hahu lilatura. We send one to the other side so that it can be glad, and it's pestilent gladness. Begin the kutshabarichu yatil ime goiral v'zamin le v'lo yada dinur dalik etayal al reishay v'al amma delay. It takes what it thinks is a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it doesn't realize that it's wearing something that's going to burn it and burn all of its koyach down. We're throwing that which is going to destroy it. The tzaddik goes down into that place in order to cause it to throw up holiness. The simancha. And this is where we come to Purim. The true secret of Yom Kippurim is the light of Purim, which is the Galus of Keser Ilah, which is the secret of Yesod Da'aba, which is the light of Chachma that comes back down into Bina. Af lo hevia Esther Hamalka im Hamelech el Amishta asher asita ki im oisi Haman harasha Sitra Achra Midbar itself Nakuda de Charivu Amalek Bina without Chachma. It says Esther Hamalka and the Melech and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they only invited me here. I'm here. And Haman really thought, wow, this is my day, just like the Seir Lazazel that goes into the Midbar because the Sitra Achra thinks it's getting its peace. And he left with what he thought was really his, and he didn't realize that it was the beginning of his demise and the refinement of Bina and the drawing of the Kalim of Haman into the house of Mordechai. And then the Melech Malchei Amlachim comes into the house of Malchus. And in that place, the true unity takes place where Esther Malchus goes directly to Chachma, and it cries over the Yiddish Kindlech, and it cries over all of the suffering. And so too, every day in exile, Esther Malka, the secret of the Shekhinah that descends down into concealment, it goes through and it short circuits the concealment of Bina, and it goes directly to the Melech Malchei Amlachim, and it davens for its children. Ukedein is Gabru kol inon nukmin de zimen kutshabarichu lemevad im ednoin ve'isgazer heich zimin de letura dalis avrame alma. And what they discuss, what the Melech and Nishmas Yisrael discuss, is all of the Nakama that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to carry out on Edom, and all of the dinim and the destruction that are going to be carried out on the other side when HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides to remove it from the world. That the concealment is going to be fundamentally destroyed and everything is going to be revealed to be the light of Chachma. And the hint of this in a time of exile is Ki nimcharu ani ve'ami. We've fallen into a place of concealment, as Esther Malka says. But the pain is not worth the damages that it will bring to the king. What's the damages of the king when Esther Malka is talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we have to cut away all concealment from this world, because what's going to be with your name? It's causing a real deficiency to kavod Shema Shemayim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as long as you allow the concealment to function, it's causing a real deficiency in your name, in Yud Chachma Keduma, V'Kedain V'Haman Nives Milufnei HaMelech V'Hamalka, and Haman is terrified in the face of the king and the queen. Kedain Nuhura Da'anpin B'Chol Chidu Ishtachich V'Yisrael Nafki L'Cheiru B'Hahu Yuma. And on that day, the illumination of the face of Chachma is revealed, and gladness is revealed, and Klal Yisrael are Zoichet to Geula. Kedain Me'ahu Yuma L'Hula. From that day and on, Chiru V'Chidva B'Eskali L'Shalta Alayu Kedain Boi L'Mechrei Imoin Mikan L'Hala. It's only going to be joy and Chachma Kamadiyav Le'Chulka Le'Espashe Minhon Hachinami Yav Nashar Amin Le'Espashe Minhon L'Tata. Just as we have to do this with the Chiluk of the Sitra Achra, we also have to do this with all of the other nations of the world. We should be zoichet to live. We should be zoichet to live with the light of the tzaddikim. We should be zoichet to live with Amunah. We should be zoichet to live with the lights of Purim and Yom Kippurim and Rosh Hashanah and all of the oros that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has in store for us, Be'ezras Hashem.